I want to make this because a lot more women have firearms, and I love that. However, even the most educated of us in that avenue are still, there's still more to learn. So I'm going to share with you something that I was surprised, because my aunt, who worked in my grandma's store selling guns, working with law enforcement, selling to law enforcement regularly, who knew that world inside and out, that was her avenue. And that's, anyways, I say all of this because even she did something wrong when in a situation of conflict. So I want to share that wisdom with you from that lived experience of my aunt. Okay. She was in her vehicle and she was driving home. There was another vehicle that started to act very aggressively on the road. They started, and she didn't know if it was because she was disabled and in a wheelchair, because I think they followed her from where they were, which was like a gas station or a grocery store. And so she was just defensively driving and keeping herself and my uncle safe, and got all the way back to her house. Now, when she pulls into her house, she has her husband run into the house to grab his gun. I can't remember if she had hers on her or not. She usually carried it, but for the context of this story, let's just say that she did not have it. Okay. And she's, again, in a wheelchair. She gets out of her car, and the car that followed her parked at my grandma's store, which is basically her front yard. Parks there, and the guy, it's a vehicle full of people. There's over 4 people in the vehicle, and the person that gets out has crutches. He has to have his friend go and grab his crutch so that he can get over to her. Okay. He threatens her by raising a crutch and trying to hit her with it, and then he fell. He then started blaming her and saying that she did something. She's in a wheelchair and was nowhere near him. He fell on his own accord because he went to hit her. Think of the outreach of a crutch. She couldn't have reached him, but he could have reached her. Okay. My uncle, at this point, I think, comes out and hands her the weapon. Okay. At this point, my aunt, we know that the state that we're in is a stand your ground act, and she was in her front yard. So when I heard this story, that was my first, I'm like, what do you mean she's in trouble? That's a stand your ground. She's in her front yard. She did nothing wrong. What she did wrong was she fired her weapon straight up, because she was trying to stop the conflict. What she should have done is fired it into the ground. Because she fired it up, the officers had to arrest her, because that is a no-go, right? Because the bullet could cause, and you can't do that within city limits, right? I don't exactly remember what it is, but I do remember just learning that. You want to stand your ground, point it to the ground. Stand your ground. Point it to the ground. Shoot it in the ground if you have to. But do not shoot it straight up into the air. You will get arrested. The only saving grace she had, as ironic as this is, and I'm not trying to sound like a horrid person, I love my aunt immensely, but she was obese and in a wheelchair and had a lot of health issues, and that literally was what stopped the justice system from taking her on. They were like, we're just going to drop charges because we don't have the facilities to deal with her. She weighs too heavy for our facilities. We're not handicap accessible, in other words. So instead of putting her into the justice system, they dropped charges because she was too big. So, this fucking world that we live in. Moral of the story, if you're standing your ground, please point it to the ground. Okay? It is not a movie. Do not point it in the air. And she even said that afterwards. She knew better. She knew better. But she was just so anxiety. This person almost hit her. And she just was trying to stop it. That she was like, stop! And just, I feel and see how that could have happened. But the moral of the lesson here is don't give them a reason to, just don't give them a reason. Because if it's not the other person that you're standing your ground with, it will be the officers when they arrive, right? And that's what we need to remember. There are more women getting their concealed carries, they're getting their firearms, but we need to know and understand how to properly use those. Growing up in that environment, the wisest piece of advice that I've had to share with my husband more than once, because he was not given this and he thinks he knows how to handle firearms just fine. That advice is never point at anybody unless you intend to at all. Never point it unless you are ready to. Okay? Never point it at anybody unless your finger and you are ready for that consequence. Do you get me? Never point it at anybody. Not to play, not to try to intimidate, not for any fucking reason unless you are ready to them. That's the lessons. Or that was the main thing that I keep instilling in my husband. And I think we need to instill that in our younger ones. We're having I don't know what's going on in Cincinnati, Ohio, but 15-year-olds are getting their hands on them, and they're going around acting like they're the new gangsters. So we're having shootouts with 15-year-olds regularly in our streets. I don't know what's happening, but it's not stopping. The news just stopped talking about it. So instead of ignoring the problem, how about we tell our young ones that if you ever are in a situation and you get a firearm in your hand, you never point it at anybody unless you are ready to take the consequence of unaliving them. Okay? Unless you're ready to take a fucking life, you put the gun down and you say no. You say, no, let's put this in the hands of somebody that is responsible. Somebody that has all their brain cells fully developed, which is over 26 years old. I don't care if you're 18. I don't care if you're 20. I don't care if you're 21. You are still not fully developed. Okay? Yes, for protection, but make sure you get educated before you just start wielding it around.